Welcome to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Hey, I'm Christine. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome again to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Today, we have my sister from another mister.
Hey.
My sister in sobriety, Jennifer, who was here at the first recording of Purpose Driven Sobriety and was I'm so grateful that you were here. So she's, we were finding out that Jen is a little bit of a diva. So before she had to record, she had to have a snack and a drink. And
I'm high maintenance.
I know.
I have to hydrate my brain and feed my belly.
Get it going again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sponsoring this episode with Beautiful Minds,
So
microneurofeedback, which is just an amazing thing. We'll have a little tidbit about that later. But Jennifer is here this time. You were here last with the first recording to just kind of be a soundboard for my story. And now we're going to hear your story in sobriety. And again, the purpose of this podcast is to just share with the person who's still suffering, the person who is still lost in addiction, whatever the addiction may be, alcoholism, drugs, name them, all of the isms, right? Mm-hmm. That we share with the person who's still suffering, what it was like, what happened, and what we're like now. I think it's so important for people to see that we are living productive, wonderful, beautiful lives without shame, and still living in, in recovery and we just tell our stories. We just tell our stories for the next person. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get started. Tell me about you.
Well, I'm Jennifer. I'm a grateful alcoholic, and I get a lot of crap about that grateful part.
You did. I hated it when you said that when I first, because Jennifer has, what's your date?
September 7th, 2007.
Okay, so you got a couple of minutes on me.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years.
Not that long.
I can write a mortgage loan, but I can't add. Yeah, but I remember coming into the room for recovery, and you introducing yourself, a grateful alcoholic, and I thought, what the fuck do you have to be grateful about? What is there? Because I was in such misery, I just could not fathom why you would ever say that, and I get it now. Yeah. So,
and that's I wasn't grateful that I knew of in the beginning. Although I cried every day in the meetings, and in fact, one of our members wrote my name on a Kleenex box because I cried every day. So you know who you are, and so. But when I reflect back on that, my person, my spiritual advisor, we share, and we have that in common, she said, I just remember you having so much gratitude. And I think it was, I finally had a choice. I finally had a choice. I could drink or kill myself, or I could live a sober, happy life. And
so what was it like? That was not you were not, I mean, I know a lot about your story. You coming in at that point in time in 2007 was not your first interaction with recovery or any type of a recovery program,
and
right?
I'm telling you, I'm talking to the person right now. I'm talking to the person who has been to a 12-step program and found it wanting and not being ready for it, not having admitted that they're an alcoholic deep down. So I did have a go-around with a 12-step program, and I was steeped in it because my parents were in the program.
So those roots run deep.
1978 was when my mother got sober, and she's still sober to this day. And so I got hauled into 12-step meetings when I was a kid, and the seed was being planted. It only took me 30 years to get sober, or about that much time. So I just, when I look back at that, I think that was God. That's my higher power. God, Jesus, so I want to say that up front because He's the reason I'm sitting here. So I was introduced to a 12-step program early on, and yet I still had to explore.
Did you know what it was when you were a kid? Did you have?
I remember my mom being an alcoholic, and so it goes back. My story goes back to the first time I ever tried something to drink was when my cousin and my sister were sitting at the kitchen table with me, and I was 5.
Wow!
And they dared me to drink from a beer can, and so I did. That was my first interaction with alcohol. So, it wasn't really about the alcohol so much. It was about fitting in.
Right.
And they used to call me the Mikey. I don't know if you remember those commercials, Mikey, who tried everything.
Yep.
That was me.
Give it to
that
Mikey,
was my
you're
name.
leading.
Give it to Mike. Give it to Mikey. She'll do it. So that was my first recollection. So the feeling around alcohol, the ism started way early. And then I just remember an introduction, that early of an introduction, and going, my mom had her own path. She had her own issues with prescription drugs and alcohol. And she and my dad divorced, and we went to go live with my dad. And so my mom left at about that time when I was almost 6 years old. And that impacted me greatly. And now I understand. I get it.
Right.
I understand why.
Sure.
And she did what she had to do. And so, we went to go live with my dad. And I remember my dad would let me have sips of beer, And I remember coming home. I was a latchkey kid. I would come home by myself, and he had a keg in the back refrigerator, and I would go sneak cups of beer, and I guess I was self-medicating at the time.
So how old were you about then?
I was probably about 8, 9 years old, and but I didn't think anything of it.
Sure.
He let me drink when we would watch football games, and eat Doritos. So why not?
Wow.
Just help myself. But I also use cookies too. I loved cookies.
There you go. That's a whole nother recovery program.
I just remember I'll use anything. I mean, honestly, people, places, things. I'll use anything. But I found that but I was very lonely. I was a very lonely person.
Even at that age.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the word lately has been, in fact, my lady person mentioned that word this morning, the word trust, or truth. I'm sorry, truth. And so that has been a big part of my discovery of.
You're good. You're okay.
That's gonna have to be cut out.
No, it's not. But it's not, baby. That's part of our story. But you know what? And the beautiful part is, aren't you so grateful that even looking back now, the gratitude and the emotion. It's like I don't ever want to lose that.
Yeah.
It's because it's real, and that is truth.
Well, I never trusted anybody in my life. I never trusted that they were going to be there, that they weren't going to leave, that they weren't going to reject me. And I'd like to say that I've fully recovered from that, but I'm still a work in progress. And so that, to me, has been a big part of my ism, is just not trusting. And yet I did not know the truth about that until much later, until I had to learn the truth.
Your life depended upon
it.
Yeah.
And so, I had this back and forth with alcohol where, my parents were so steeped in recovery that it was an internal struggle for me. And yet, every time I would drink in high school or college, I got drunk. But I couldn't see it then. I had control. I didn't do it all the time. That's what alcoholics always do, it all the time. And I didn't do it all the time. But every time I did do it, I got drunk. And so fast forward, I got in college. I did go to treatment. I was dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts, and I was drinking, and I went to treatment in Arizona, and I was grateful that I did.
So how old were you then?
I was 20 years old.
So what what brought that on?
I felt like I was having a mental breakdown, and I was isolated, and I was seeing a counselor, and I was, from early on, I'd always talked or thought about killing myself. I always thought I was the problem, and
so was your mom in the picture at that point in time, or was it just your sister and your dad?
So we went back and lived with my mom for a period of time, and when I was actually, I moved back in with her when I was 11 years old.
Got it.
But my first stepdad was a recovering alcoholic, and then he ended up falling off the wagon. Looking back at that, we had this neighbor down the street, and their dad was an alcoholic too, and we would swap houses. Like their dad would come home drunk, so they would come over to our house, or my stepdad would come home drunk, we'd go over to their house. So it was more common than I thought it was. So basically we went, I grew up with I lived with my mom and my sister at that point. We moved to a smaller town. I just felt like a third wheel, all the time. I never felt like I fit in anywhere. And I never felt like I could trust anyone to be truthful about how they felt about me. If they said they liked me, I doubted it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I know exactly how you feel. Either I doubted it or I wondered what they wanted from me. Yeah. I knew they wanted something, right. And odds are it wasn't going to be to my benefit.
No. So I did. I went off to college, and I felt like I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I dropped out of college, and I was seeing a therapist, and he recommended treatment for me. And
so where were you living?
I was living in. I was going to North Texas.
Oh, okay. So you went to another state?
No, like Denton
for treatment.
Oh, for treatment. Yeah, I went to Arizona.
Wow.
So
that had to be scary.
Yeah, but I think I was just looking for a way out of my life. The desperation that I felt at that point. So I went to treatment, and I kind of identified with the alcoholism because, like I said, when I drank, I got drunk.
Right.
But I wasn't the brown bag under the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And so although I did drink Mad Dog 2020, so
you got to drink that out of a paper bag.
Come on.
But isn't it funny, not funny, haha, but isn't it funny how people think of alcoholics, and that's exactly what they think. Someone that has lost their job, their car, their house, and they're homeless and living under a bridge. It's like, oh, honey, no. No.
And I didn't really realize, looking back, I mean, I think I wrestled with that idea my whole life. What does that look like? What does an alcoholic look like? And I don't look like that. So that's what kept me out there, drinking. So I came back, and I would go to some AA meetings. I would pick up a desire chip, and then I would promptly follow that up with, getting drunk. And then I would go to the next, meeting. And I finally started going to a group, and I got a chip, and I met this lady. She became my first sponsor. And I really got steeped in what it was and what the disease of alcoholism was. And I stayed sober for over 4 years. And then I met a person who I later married who wasn't an alcoholic. And the lifestyle he lived, his family drank. So there was that first thought of, I can't be an alcoholic at this age.
Right.
I'm only 26 years old. I can't be an alcoholic. And so I just exited from the program. And so I remember talking to a lady who was I fired my sponsor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's okay. And so you were just convinced at that point in time that you weren't an alcoholic, and that you didn't need recovery.
I didn't need it. Yeah.
And you were 26 at that time?
Yeah, I was about 26 years old, and about to be 27, and I was getting married that year.
Mm.
And so it just didn't fit the picture.
Right.
You know,
That's dangerous.
But here's that thought that I haven't had a drink in a long time. And my life is good. I'm pretty sure.
But was that the truth?
Right. But I'm pretty sure I'm okay now.
Mm.
And what I didn't know was that it wasn't ever about the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It was always about what was going on the inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the ism part. So I got married, and it was great. Like, I was drunk at my wedding. In fact, the day that I announced to my sponsor, that I was leaving the 12-step program, I had already ordered 2 beers with my Chinese food.
Oh,
So, you know, it was like,
to celebrate.
yeah. I mean, like, I can drink again.
Right.
You know, I don't have a problem with this. So, but I remember her words. She said to me, you know, Jennifer, I don't know if you're an alcoholic or not, but I do know one thing. If you are, you know where to come back.
Oh, wow.
If you can make it back. And
Ouch.
I have chills
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Prophetic words. And, I mean, I had all
So I have hang on. I have a
Yeah.
question. So knowing that, so your mom was active in recovery
Mm-hmm.
and working a program and staying sober. So was she all up in your business?
You know, she worked a really good other 12-step program for
Okay,
families.
for families. Oh, ooh.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think, I don't know what she thought, but she didn't nag me. She just was black belt. I'm telling you.
She learned
just
well.
black belt.
In other recovery, you know, families can learn, because Rick did that too, and they learned that there's not a damn thing they can do to get us to do anything.
Well, what was she going to say at that point?
Right.
I'd already been in that.
You got to let them be on their path.
Yeah, I'd already
Mm-hmm.
learned what I needed to. She knew that I knew what it was, and you know, all of those things that are required to be sober, I had done.
Oh, that has to be torture as a parent.
And she was watching me, and you know, maybe there was even a little doubt, like, you know, I don't know, you'd have to ask her, but maybe
it
there's
skipped
like,
her.
okay, maybe she can get it together if her life has finally gotten together. And so the picture was beautiful. I mean, I had, you know, I had the Ann Taylor suits, and I had the Kate Spade purse, and his family lived on Beverly Drive, and it, you know, but it was great because I would walk into their house, and my father-in-law would hand me a Cuba Libre in a crystal glass. It was awesome, you know. And so I just remember getting schnockered a lot. And so, you know, and I think that concerned my first husband. And then definitely in the end, our marriage lasted about 8 years. And in the end, you know, I was hiding how much I drank from him.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended in divorce. I always say, I joke that I've been married 3 times, and so I have almost I have a good start to a calendar of ex-husbands. So anyway, so yeah, I fast forward to the really, you know, hard years was after the divorce. And I moved here to Central Texas to be closer to my family. The irony being that I really wasn't available to my family because I was busy going to the bar every night.
Wow.
I was drinking on my own. So all the things, you know. And so the other person I want to speak to is the teacher. Because I thought in my mind, I can't possibly be an alcoholic because I'm a teacher. I mean, like,
Teachers don't do that.
Teachers don't do what I do. You
They
know,
have too
they
much
don't
responsibility
do that.
and
Yeah. And so, you know, that part that says the alcoholic leads a double life. Oh, that was so me. That was so me. I tried my hardest to, you know, I mean, I've been to, I work with children. I teach them how to read. And I was working with kids, and I love kids. I love working with them and seeing them grow in their skills and reading and offering them a different, trajectory. But then right after, I would immediately go to the bar. I was the one that arranged happy hour.
Right.
That was me. And then after happy hour with the teachers, I would go to the real people who drank. And so that's what I did night after night after night. And so I didn't answer the phone anymore. I didn't really want to be around people anymore. I had, I was shutting people out more and more and more. I didn't return phone calls. A friend of mine down the street had just had a baby, and she said, "I'd love for you to come see this baby." And I'm thinking, okay, she gets home by 5:30. I'm already
that's
gone
not going
by
to work
then.
for me.
That's, I mean, I can't even promise. That was my first thought. When am I going to go over there where I'm sober? Like I can't show up drunk.
Right.
And there was no guarantee that I could maintain that, so towards the end, it wasn't
the planning and strategizing and
how much I had to drink, how much I had. I mean, I was buying 18-pack of beer bottles every other day. And I was drinking the hard stuff at the bars. And, so my mom's big into recycling, and
oh gosh,
go mom! So it's
you
right
were
down the
responsible
street.
Drunk?
Yeah, oh yeah. So we but that was the
rationalizing. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, well,
Rational
if I do this and it looks good, then nobody. I mean, why would I give up drinking if everything else is okay? Never mind that I'm driving drunk, that I'm driving in a blackout. I'm driving to the liquor store when I'm drunk to get more, all of those things. But so my mom, and she ingrained in me the importance of recycling. And so down the street, it's not that far from us, and so down the street, I would go with my beer bottles in the trunk of my car, and the same lady was there with pink hair.
Oh,
and I just remember telling her, each time I had this wild party.
Oh, she's like, "You're the partying dad."
And she's like,
"Partying person I ever did see."
And then I was like, I can't go back. I can't recycle anymore because she's gonna catch on.
And you didn't know her from Adam, but you were worried about what she was going to think about you.
Did she just give me that look? That in my head.
Oh sure. Oh gosh.
That little worm of a thought. Like, do they know? Do they know? And so at one point, I remember going up to, so I met my second husband on a bar stool. Sweet guy, but he took me out. He would take me to the bar, and we would go out and drink together. It was great. He was my drinking buddy. And I do remember, thinking that he drinks more than I do. So I'm not as bad as that.
So it wasn't even oh shit, he drinks more than I do. It was another rational lies.
And I could hide behind that. Only, I was hiding from him how much I drank too.
Oh wow.
Because I didn't want to feel the heat from him. So I remember one time we went up to see my dad. Near Dallas is where he lives, and my dad was really concerned. I guess we drank a lot that trip, and I got home, and a few days later, I got a letter from my dad, and he wrote me saying how concerned he was about my drinking.
Oh, wow.
And my smoking.
Now, he's not one of us, right?
No.
Okay, got it. He's one of those weird normal people.
Yes. And I've seen him tipsy 3 times in my life.
That's just
That's
weird.
it, Okay. One was like his, 80th birthday party.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so I got this letter, and it just socked me. And I called my mom, and I said, "You wouldn't believe this letter Dad wrote me." And I was so defensive. And she said, well, honey, maybe there's some truth in there.
Oh.
And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to quit smoking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I called him and I said, you know what, Dad, you're right. I'm going to quit smoking. Will you buy me, the medication they give?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, I will do that. And
this is totally not what my letter was about, but okay.
he didn't even lead with that. So I ripped up the letter. I wished I had saved it. I ripped it up. That's how I felt about it. And I thought, it's not safe anymore here.
Mm-hmm.
So the walls are closing
He's seeing
in.
me.
The walls are closing in. And I lived in fear of my family having an intervention on me.
Wow.
Because I already knew. I already knew how this game worked.
They had history with this whole thing. So
I knew how this game worked.
So did you stay away from them?
Yeah. So I saw my family less and less, and so my second husband and I we were, off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward a little bit, and because we don't like to waste time. I met him in August. He moved in October, and so
okay, so that was a whirlwind love.
Yeah, and then we got married that following summer, and then we proceeded to drink. And I remember seeing a picture of myself in my classroom with my students and how bloated I looked, how awful I looked. Mm-hmm. And it just makes me sad.
It starts to show on us physically.
It does. And I was, so it was a daily thing at that point. And so all the little mile markers, like I'll never... That was one of them. I'll never be a daily drinker. Mm-hmm. And I'll never drink in the morning. Well, honey, 2 a.m. is in the morning.
Right. Technically.
And so so these little mile markers I'd set for myself that, that's what an alcoholic is. Again, focusing on the alcohol and not on the obsession.
But you did. Yeah. But you didn't know.
No, it was the unmanageability part that I could not relate to. That was what kept me out of 12-step program I still had my job.
Right.
I still had my husband, I still had my health, although everything was about to come to a big head. And so, that took some time. And I already knew, I was starting to understand that I was powerless because every thought I had to do with alcohol.
Wow.
And so we were at the bar one night. Everything kind of came to a head September 6th of 2007. And we came in separate cars. We drank a lot with friends that night. And none of them see anymore. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he took off.
So what I hear you saying is you said friends loosely with the air quotes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember their names.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we just drank together.
Yep.
And so he took off ahead of me, and he was kind of racing down Lakeshore, and I followed him, and I was 3 sheets to the wind, and I was just trying to make it home without hitting anybody. That was one of my worst fears.
Wow.
Is hitting somebody, hitting a kid backing out of a driveway or whatever. And so I saw him take off, and I thought, oh, please slow down, And so I tried calling him. He didn't answer. So I drive a little further up, and I see he's been pulled over by the police.
Oh.
And we live right down the road. And so I went ahead. I didn't stop because I was too scared.
Yeah, I was going to say,
No. So I ran home, and I just panicked. And he called me, and he said, I've been pulled over, and you're going to have to come get me.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, okay. And so I got in the shower. I washed up. I tried to look like I had
sober.
Just gotten out of bed. That's what I tried to. That's what I've got to look like I'm trying to get out of bed. Brush my teeth. I mean, I don't even know what I smell like. And the police officer called me from his phone and said, if you don't come get him, we're going to take him in for DWI.
Oh, wow. The
So-
fact that they even gave him an
Yes.
option.
Yeah. And so I went up there and I tried to stay as far away from them as possible.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget the look on the police officer's face and when I showed up.
Mhm.
And there was that look like, that they know, but they
Right.
don't know, but they
Mhm.
sense it anyway.
Mhm.
And I thought, I got to get out of here. And I'm like, get in the car. So I took him home. They didn't say anything to me, but here's what came to me, Christine. It was actually a Bible verse, and it was the writing on the wall from the book of Daniel.
Mhm.
And that flashed before me, and I heard somebody say, that is you. That is you. You are going to be next. Because there was no stopping me. No matter how good of a person I tried to be.
Right.
No matter how many morals I had. No, like I'm a good person who has a big heart for kids, but that wasn't going to keep me from drinking, So I got him home, and I just remember falling apart. And that night's sleep was pretty rough. And I
imagine.
woke up the next day, and he was pouring out all the alcohol. We've been given a gift, and we're not going to do this anymore, and blah, blah, blah. And I immediately called for my mother, and she wasn't there. She was at a meeting, and my stepdad answered. And I just remember Christine saying to him, I am a drunk.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't even, I didn't want to even use the word alcoholic. I am a drunk. Like it was the first time I ever said that. And I don't even know where that came from, but it didn't come from me. And in that moment, I felt like God was giving me a choice where I didn't have one before. That I could either go down, I could kill myself, get it over with. I could keep drinking and wind up dead or in jail. And if I had been taken to jail, I don't know what I would have done to myself. Or I could accept help. And everything I thought I knew about a 12-step program, I had to trash it. I had to get rid of it. I had to let it go. Everything that I thought I knew, I had to just put it behind me. And I had to start new. And I just remember feeling so humiliated. Like I was a failure. That, that I can't even, can't get it right. And every other respect of my life, I mean, I have my master's degree, every other respect of my life, I've been able to persevere and pull myself up. And this was the one area I couldn't. And I hurt a lot of people just by shutting them out of my life. Or even making them worry about me, And so my mom took me back to my first meeting.
Wow. Oof.
And it was a couple of weeks before I found my person, my lady. And she did not talk to me in the same language that I'd been used to. And I'm so grateful for that. She didn't come at me with a bunch of terms that we're used to, right, in the program. I had to hear it differently. I heard a lot of love in her voice. And I heard a lot about, her higher power, whom she calls Jesus. And I thought she was a Jesus freak.
Right.
And So I cried every day. And I just remember being really grateful that I had a chance. Because I just felt like the other option was death, either way I looked at it. And so I met with her. We started doing, the work. And she, I know you shared this with your story before, she also brought me back to that one moment. What was, because I felt like a hole in the donut, like it talks about.
For people that, again, our goal is to reach that person that's still suffering. What does that mean? That's kind of a saying sometimes we let roll off of our tongue. I feel like the hole in the donut. What does that mean to you? What is that? What is that?
I felt empty on the inside, that I didn't have any answers or any solution. And I was going to have a higher power that did have my answer.
Because before the higher power was alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a power greater than yourself.
It totally
right?
was. It was my every waking thought. That's what someone said. Whatever you think about the most is your higher power. And that was alcohol for me.
Wow. I love how, okay, say that again.
Whatever you think about the most is your higher power. So, yeah. And so I'm grateful for those little sayings that people gave me, because I could start to relate. I could finally.
That made sense. It makes sense.
Relate. I could finally relate. And I needed something greater than me that loved me. And I did not trust any of that. I didn't trust it. And so what I found, this was the most beautiful part of this whole
But
story.
did you find that you trusted her?
I did. She's gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
She's an angel.
She is, and she
can never hear this because we'll never get her head through the door again if we let her hear this, right?
She's the most humble person. She's like, stop.
I know,
Y'all
right?
stop it.
I can hear too.
But she was classy and beautiful and kind, and just honestly, the first time we met, we talked about her relationship with her kids and what it was like for me, and my relationship with my mom.
Oh, wow. So that was...
So she wanted to know my opinion.
Hey.
Right? Like, hey, this lady's smart. She wants to know my opinion. No, but she got me talking.
Right.
Without
shame.
That was beautiful that she got me talking instead of telling me.
Right.
And she's just magical like that. And so, we met at her house, and it was sometime in September. I was newly sober, and I was like you. I mean, every day was, what am I going to do? I had 2 clients. I was doing some reading therapy, and I had 2 clients. I'd quit my job and took on 2 clients, and that was all I had. So I would nap a lot. I would read a lot, literature, and I would go to any meeting. I mean, just all the meetings.
So let me ask you, because you're still married to the husband, the drinking buddy. Was he? Because I'm curious. Was he quitting at the same time?
He was for a while. He quit it, but he did not join me.
Okay.
In this
so
endeavor.
You were in this marriage. You were kind of off on this journey on your own.
Yeah, and I thought,
what was that like?
It was.
Did you? So I guess my
difficult.
question is, yeah, okay.
Because he wanted me to drink with him again eventually, and we would.
Oh,
there
my
was
goodness.
There was whiskey in the freezer, and he would get it out and he would shove it in my face, and I can be a little rebellious, and I just remember thinking, F you.
Oh, I can't imagine what that was like, and you not partaking in that. I mean, that was.
But I think at the time, Christine, I felt like that was the path of death for me, and I got it. like I got it, but not before I had my spiritual experience.
Right.
Like I had to have my spiritual experience before I could get to that point.
Have that strength.
Because every day for 2 weeks, I was hanging on.
White
I would like,
knuckling
it was, yeah. And it was just, the specific time of the day, I was like, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go to the liquor store and I'm going to.
You're afraid of yourself.
Oh,
boy,
I didn't
dude.
trust myself at all.
I wouldn't go to the grocery store.
I didn't trust myself. I couldn't go down that aisle.
I wouldn't drive the same way home.
No, and it's not that far from us. So we live in a kind of the same area. So,
tell me about that day.
So the day that I had my spiritual experience,
I want to hear it all.
I love it. I love it. So I went over to her house, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got my books and my little. I know what we're gonna do.
How'd that work?
Not very well. So, and I remember telling her, "Aren't you supposed to tell me to read such and such? Aren't you supposed to tell me?" And she's like, "Look, if you want someone like that, then maybe I'm not your person." And I was like, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa!" And I took a pause, and I thought, you know what? I don't want you to tell me any of that.
Right.
I really just need help. I just need to know how not to drink.
Right.
And she would say, "Get your vacuum cleaner out," and vacuum.
She made me do dishes.
And so, it was just very practical at the beginning. And so, because I didn't really know how to do the spiritual part. So she invited me to her house. We started talking and we were going over, and I got step one. I get it. I get it now. It was the lie. That's what was keeping me from getting sober. The lie that I wasn't an alcoholic, that I wasn't a drunk, that I could control it, that I could, I could quit anytime. So I remember hearing the speaker talk one time about his alcoholism. It's an older speaker. And he said, my problem was not putting the plug in the jug. My problem was taking the plug out of the jug. And when I heard that, it clicked in me, Christine, because I was like, I could put the plug in the jug when my first husband was ticked off at me about, whatever. Or I was, about to get pulled over by a cop,
right.
Or, getting caught at my desk sleeping by my students, that kind of a thing. And so I didn't have a problem with that. My problem was taking the plug out of the jug, because that was always what I was going to do. And then towards the end of it, the wheels were off and I couldn't do any of that anymore. I just was drinking all the time and I couldn't stop. So for a long time, that was my alcoholism before it got really bad for me. And so, I got step one. I conceded. I fully conceded. And then, so we talked about the higher power thing, and I had so many reservations. And of course I didn't trust anything or anybody except her in that moment. That I really felt like she was there just for the purpose of connecting me with my higher power so that I could be sober. That was the only purpose. And I could trust that. And then when she started asking me about God and what I believe about him, and she asked me what my first memory of him was, or what was my first memory of the most tragic event in my life. And it took me back to that point when my mom left. And I cried, and I was really reluctant to do whatever was next, because I had been to all these therapists and told them the same story. I had told my story to people on the bar stool.
And nothing ever changed. Right? And nothing ever changed.
Everybody knew my story. So talk. So she asked me, well, where do you think God was? And I said, I don't know. And she said, why don't you ask him? And I thought she had lost her mind. I thought, you are a crazy lady.
Yeah.
And I did. And I did it out loud. And immediately he responded to me, I never left you. I was always there.
Mm.
And it was like, it just all made sense at that point. It just like all came together for me. And I remember she said, why don't you go sit on my back porch? And I did. And I sat in the sun. It was a beautiful sunny day. And I sat in the sun and I just felt his presence.
And you believed it.
I believed it for the first time in my life. I believed it. And I left there. And I crossed over the bridge to go back home. And I left there with a feeling of peace and joy that I had never in my life experienced ever. And I never wanted to drink again. It was removed from me. And later when I went back and I thought about what happened, and she said, write it down. Write what he said. Write it down. And I went back and I looked at it and I thought, oh my God. The whole time I felt like my biggest problem was my relationship with my mom, and she left me. And Christine, I grew up that moment because I realized it was never between me and my mom. It was between me and God.
Wow.
And so I have taken that same tack with my sobriety since then. That it's about growing up and realizing that my parents aren't my higher power. My husband's not my higher power. My child is not my higher power.
And alcohol is not.
Alcohol is not my higher power. And it wasn't anymore. It wasn't. And I'm responsible for my relationship with my higher power, nobody else. And I'm also responsible for my alcoholism, nobody else. And so I try to live by that daily, But I know how I got sober. He removed it from me. And I'm so forever grateful for that moment. Now, that was the beginning.
Oh, I was going to say that. Yeah, there's not a period here. There's not we don't have a period here.
That was the beginning.
But didn't you find though that it's like all of a sudden I can only speak for myself, but I know that it was that way for you too. That all of a sudden what seemed like an uphill, up mountain challenge of trying to not drink, all of a sudden I had a renewed strength that I could take on the fucking world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I bring it. What can I do? What do I do next? Because all of a sudden I had a power in me. I had a power in me.
Yes.
That donut was solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was complete.
Yeah. Well, and I remember going, and so, I just kind of like, I just went full force with this program stuff again.
So and did you go home and share this with your husband that day?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
And he was out there, doing the deal. But Christina, honestly, really tried to just look at myself and disregard what he was doing. I set him up a room in our house to be the man cave just so he could go do whatever he needed to do.
Right.
And I just focused on my sobriety and my relationship with God. And I would go out and I would go to meetings, but I would also go out and take meetings to different, Freeman Center, and when it was in the old house. And I remember trying to, drag these people into sobriety and, like, come here, let's
like
do this.
You had the power.
Yeah. And, And so I remember working with this one girl, and I was almost a year sober. I remember that. And I was feeling a little squirrely, and I was working with her, and I was like, we were doing our first, second, and third step. And nothing happened. So I called her.
She's broken.
I called my lady, and I was like, she didn't have the same experience I had. And she said, Jennifer, this may come as a surprise to you, but you may not be there when she has a spiritual experience.
Oh, man. Well, what did I sign up for?
Right. I know. I was looking for that high, I mean, it was, it never occurred to me that, of course, she's going to have a spiritual experience.
And I'm going to give it to her.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to her. I'm going to show her how this is done. And so it was really.
That was humbling.
It was totally humbling. And I didn't realize what a big ego I have. It's like I've heard somebody say it's the fastest repairing organism in our body that we can, it just instantly, it gets knocked down but can repair itself. And so I've learned a lot about that. But, I'm 15 years sober. And I don't ever want to think that I've got it. I had a hard day yesterday. I got some news that I didn't like, it didn't sit well with me, and it was out of my control. The old me would have drank over that. I would have gone straight to the bar, and I want to say this. I was in a place that they were serving alcohol, and that crossed my mind like, oh yeah, the bar's over there. But I never meditate on that. I asked God, remove it. And you know what? He showed, it's so funny how this always happens, but we have a friend in the program, and I know her sister, and her sister has come to some of the meetings, and she was there last night. And I said, you are the next best thing. Come over here. I said, your sister is one of my good friends in the program. And I had a hard day today. And I'm so glad to see you here, because that reminds me I'm okay. Right. I'm okay. This is all okay. It's not the worst, and I think, a lot of why I drank in the beginning was because of the anxiety I did have, feeling like I was a fish out of water all the time and constantly worried about what people thought of me and how I looked, and I'll never forget when my lady friend said to me, Jennifer, if I have to act good, I'm just going to drink. And that made so much sense to me. Like, I can't, I have to live my life on spiritual principles.
We stop acting.
Stop acting.
Stop acting. We stop pretending.
Or manipulating or trying to get you to think X, Y, and Z about me. And I think that was, there was such a front I had to put up in order to keep my alcoholism alive and well. I had to keep I have to keep everything propped up to get you to believe, that I'm okay, that that I've got it together, and it was all about me. It was all about me. So today I try to live a life where I'm glorifying God.
Well, you've been through some life traumas in this in the 11 years I've known you.
Yeah, well,
you didn't have children at the time that you got sober, which again is a blessing to your daughter now.
She's never seen me take a sip of alcohol, and she's 12. And oh God, that was another conversation I remember having early on. I thought I was barren. I could never have kids. Anyway, so I was. Back up a little bit, the second husband was still drinking. I finally got up the courage to say, we can't keep doing this, and you need to go. you need to get sober. You need help. And so he moved out temporarily and, joined a 12-step program and went to a counselor who helped him. And I thought we were going to be, Mr. and Mrs. 12-step.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not the plan. But what was the plan was that during that time, I got pregnant with my daughter. I was 40 years old, having my first baby.
Sober.
Yeah, sober and loving every minute of it. And before that, I remember crying about not ever getting pregnant, not ever having a kid, And I remember Millie looked at me and she said, "So is this the hill you're going to die on? Is this the thing that you're going to say, oh, I can drink now because I can't get pregnant?"
That was rude.
Right? And I looked at her. I don't even know what my face looked like, but it shocked me into reality. And I had to say, no, I'm not going to let it do that. I had to say that out loud because you know what? She's like me, and she knew I was already thinking it. And so
you probably didn't even realize you were already thinking it until she said it.
Called it out. Yeah, she's like, "Ooh, that's back there," and she knows me. And so, so I did. We came back together for a time. I got pregnant with my daughter. She was born in 2011, and he went back to drinking, and I couldn't, even our daughter couldn't keep him sober, and so it was rough. It was rocky. We ended up getting a divorce. And I had, I kept thinking how, all of the pain of that and the fear, I understand what that's like, fighting for your kid, who's watching their dad slowly kill himself. And he did. He died last year, in March, at the beginning of March. So it's been a year. I think his body was just give out. And I remember one of the times I was sitting there and in the meeting, you were next to me and I just lost it. And you came over and helped me. Just the sadness of our lives, of staring at myself in the mirror.
Well, and staring at him dying, which it could have been you. And what I saw in you during that time was a compassion for you didn't hate him, you hated the disease. You had compassion and sadness, although he couldn't be in your life and affect your life anymore. You wouldn't allow that, but you had a compassion for him and a desire for him to find what you had found, and that tortured you.
It did, and I felt like that we were on the same path together.
Almost survivor's guilt.
Yeah, it totally was.
You think?
It totally was, Christine. Like, why did I get it and he didn't? And that makes me sad. It makes me sad for him. It makes me sad for our daughter, for his other children. And I can't say that I didn't always, I didn't always feel like I had compassion for him. Sometimes I really felt like I hated him.
Well,
and
you're human.
Yeah, and that was that I had to accept that too about myself. Like I saw an actor on the Facebook reel about hugging the cactus is what he said. I love that expression. And I've been thinking about that. It's like, I'm going to have to embrace all of these things about myself that I don't like, so I can make peace with it. And, God's going to use or remove whatever he wants in me as long as I stay close to his will.
Connected.
And right. And so, I did. I mean, I thought awful thoughts. And then one day, probably a couple of months before he passed away, I got humbled. I don't know what it was exactly, but I got on my knees and I said, God, forgive me. Forgive me for these thoughts. Forgive me for that. And I really want him to be happy. And then, of course, he died, a couple of months later. And I think if I had had those thoughts while, at the same time that he died, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably feel guilty about all that. I'd feel awful about myself.
Right.
But, I was able to take my daughter to the hospital, and she said goodbye to him. We spent 2 days there. And that night after she left, I mean, there was nobody there, Christine. Nobody. His kids had already visited him. He's not in contact with his sisters. His mother's in a nursing home with dementia. I mean, there was nobody there.
Wow.
We left, and he died 5 hours later. And I know that I was so grateful that I could be present and do that for her.
Right.
To think of her. I wasn't drunk.
Well, because you look at it, and the
Yeah.
disease, regardless of you quit 3 years before she's born, and she still is affected by the damn disease.
Of course,
and I was front row seat watching you fight for her. When he would pick her up intoxicated or drive her, and you were watching that battle all while you're trying to stay sober and work a program. I mean, yeah, that was really hard.
I leaned a lot on my people, you and my sponsor, and all of my
all of your friends.
Were just such a big part of that, and it had to be. And I do remember, I remember driving one day to some function, I don't remember what it was, and talking to my lady, and she said to me, I was like, I don't know. I've got all these, this is what's going on. This was, da, 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 da. She's like, well, what does God say about that? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh, it's so annoying. I'm calling you.
Yeah, right. Like, what does he say? Tell me. Did he tell you?
Right? I need you to call it, or you to ask him, call me back and tell me what he said.
There again, it's like making somebody else responsible. And she said, okay, let me just tell you something, Jennifer. Which I knew I was in trouble then. She said, if you don't have that kind of God where you sit in his lap and call him dad and let him love on you and tell you you are okay, that he's got this, then I don't know what. I can't help you. And I was like, oh my gosh. So she put it to me that I was going to have to accept responsibility for the relationship I had with him.
I remember her saying to me, if your problems are that big, it sounds to me like you need to get a bigger God.
Whoa. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not afraid to share the hard things with her, the things that I want to keep secret. And I mean, we're all like that. We all have secrets to tell. I'm just telling you. And as long as you're holding on to them, you're going to stay sick.
Yep.
And you think you're not hurting anybody. And I'm going to tell you, you really are. Maybe not right away, but it's the lie. We believe the lie.
It's cancer.
I've got this. I've got it under control. So pretty much if I don't want to tell her, I tell her. That's my rule.
Yep.
If I don't want to tell her, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Because it's the truth shall make you free, and that's what it's all based on, is truth. Like I want to get it out now. I just want to get it all out. I don't want to hang on to any of it. So, and the other word that I have right now is grow. I want to keep growing. If I'm the same that I was when I first got into the deal, I'm just a dry drunk. My God has had to get bigger.
So a dry, okay. So again, let's assume that nobody listening knows what a dry drunk is. Define that. What is that?
Well, so to me, a dry drunk is you still have all the isms. You're still trying to control. You're trying to manipulate, rationalize, justify, all of those things. Like I said before, the unmanageability part was the hard part for me to get, because I still had everything, right? That's not what it's about. It's not about, I remember going to a meeting and it was a mostly men's meeting. There was like one or two other ladies in there, and everybody in there had a DWI. And I was like, you know what? This isn't DWIs Anonymous. this is, this is about alcohol and alcoholism. And the ism part is really the spiritual malady, the sickness, that I don't believe in anything except myself. And I let myself down. I have to believe that a power greater than myself will take away the obsession. I have to have a power, a belief in something rooted other than myself.
So you came to learn that alcohol was not your problem.
Right.
Which is,
it's not about
it goes
the
completely
alcohol.
against what it appears to be. It's like that, when you realize, once you're in recovery and you realize that, you're just, it's so profound, that understanding.
It's the spiritual sickness.
Because if I can change what I drink, I can only drink on the weekends. I'll just drink after 5, or I'll just, when you were strategizing and reasoning with alcohol, you might have a problem.
Yeah. And so it was the lie, it was a lie that I could drink like other people. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to prove it over and over. And I would fail over
until
and over.
It no longer worked.
Right. And so, that part in me, that I was lacking was the spiritual component. It wasn't about being good. It was never about being good, or straightening up, or acting right, or pulling yourself up, or being moral, or even going to church. It was never about that. It's always about developing or having a relationship with that power that I lacked. It was
about being honest.
That I lacked, yeah. And so I started, going back to subsequent steps that I would take, different times in my sobriety, I never even realized the extent of the lies about my drinking until I would go back and rework those steps. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really did a number on myself. And
everybody around me.
I tried to, I really didn't convince anybody.
Yeah, right. Well, we thought we did.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Bullshit. They know.
Even my dad was the one. He was saying, you got this. Just try to, just drink one. Just drink, And then him finally realizing that was never going to be the case with me. And so, what I know is I am spiritually sick, and it requires, a huge God that can solve that.
So tell me, first of all, I'm so glad you're sober.
Me too.
And I'm so glad that I know you.
Me too.
We, Jennifer and I office in the same building, and we are right next door to each other, and it's nothing for us to pop in and go, I'm thinking about this. Is that crazy? And you go like, yep, you're batshit crazy. Go back to work. So tell me, how do you start every single day?
I read the big book. And I pray and I meditate, and I've even asked my family to join me in that. So we'll set a little timer for 5 minutes, and my daughter even asks me to set the timer. Mom, can we meditate? I'm like, yes, absolutely. So it's really, I've had periods where I've meditated twice a day, and it's really effective. I'm not doing that right now, but I will stop and ask God into my day all throughout the day.
Oh, sure.
And I may do that I may get on my knees in my office and say, I give up. I write on a piece of paper, I give up, And so this may sound crazy to people, but I remember early on when I was a single mom, and I couldn't do it all. I was working full time. I had my daughter. She was a handful. And I was like, I cannot get her potty trained. She's 3, and I can't get her potty trained. And I remember calling my lady, and she would say, well, why don't you surrender that? And I was like, what? Like God's going to potty train her? And she was like, why don't you ask him? And so I did. And he did the next day.
Oh, my gosh.
Literally the next day, she's like, Mommy, I did it in the potty. I was like, what?
Wow.
But like even down to like little things. And I know some people are going to debate about that, but I'm just telling you right now,
your truth,
like
honey.
I try to give everything over, like surrender.
Isn't
like
it wonderful to be powerless?
Yes.
Isn't it beautiful to be powerless?
The only thing that I ever have control over is my response, my action, what I do, what I eat, what I wear. Those are all the things that, I can control. And not even then. I mean, sometimes our bodies do,
That's questionable.
I mean, hello, we're at that stage in our life where it's like, yeah, that was not the part of the plan.
Back to the Oreos.
Yeah. And so, that's just kind of a part of life. But I try to, just maintain an attitude of gratitude. And also, I try to help other people as much as I can, and that's just by sharing my experience. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a medical doctor, but I try to share my experience. And the times that I have sponsees, and watching them go through life-changing steps is, it's like I'm sitting on, the front row of a basketball game and eating popcorn, just watching like, oh my gosh, what's he going to do next with her?
It's spiritual, but it's spiritual food, man. It's And the beautiful thing is we get to do this for the rest of our lives.
I know.
You don't get into a recovery program and graduate. Thank God. I get to, have people like you in my life that, I've given authority to call me on my shit, to go, listen, which Rick could, for instance, never look at me and go, maybe you're being a little selfish here. I'd claw his eyeballs out. Yeah, I just would. God love him. But it's a beautiful life.
It is.
It's just a beautiful life.
It is. And I never knew that it could be this good ever. Like, I had no idea. That girl that came in, 36 years old, she had no idea what it was going to be like. And that's the beautiful part of sobriety. Just like, I always want to improve. I always want to grow. I always want to, I'm not going to be perfect, and I don't plan to, that's not part of the plan, I know, but, I want more and more of an awareness of the blessings that are in front of me and the peace that comes with knowing God and that He's got it. And then watching other people in my life and being there for them when they're having a hard time or when they're, just celebrating with them.
Right.
Being
present.
My amends to my dad, I remember I said to him, I'm sorry I made you worry about me. I'm sorry that I caused you so much worry, and we had a lot of fights about all of that. I'm a head case, and when am I going to get my stuff together? And everybody's waiting for you to be happy. He said those words to me, and I understand that now.
What would you say to that person that's ready to end it all, that just thinks that there's absolutely no hope? What would you tell them to do? What do they need to do?
That reach out for help. Just reach out for help. Who, like, call Christine. Reach out on the, I see that on social media.
We're everywhere.
People are reaching out, and I love it. It's beautiful. It is beautiful because I felt so alone for so long, and I didn't have to, and I found out that I wasn't unique, that that this really can work, but I have to concede first, that I need help, that I can't do it on my own.
Right.
And I think that's what I wish that my second husband had done.
Some of us don't survive.
I know. And my heart hurts badly for that. But yeah, reach out for help. you don't have to know all the answers.
Mm-mm.
You don't even have to be good.
You don't even have to know any of the answers.
No.
Luckily for you, there's other people that have trudged that road that
Right.
can show, have been down in that deep pit that can show you how to get out.
Absolutely. You don't have to wait until you get DWI.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait until, you lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can stop now. Another friend in our program says our bottom is our bottom, and it's whenever we quit digging.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that I didn't have to go down as far as some people. But I'm going to say this, Christine, and you and I've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's who is at that jumping off point we've all experienced the same bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what our outside looks like.
Right.
It only matters where we are on the inside
Mm-hmm.
that counts. And so if you still have everything, but you are about ready to end it all,
Mm-hmm.
that is your bottom.
Right.
You don't have to go any further than that. And you don't have to prove it to anybody.
Reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.